Hello everyone, thank you again for joining us. We are MBS Academy. Our mission is to bring digital technology close to all professionals. We teach business professionals how to use digital technologies and manage digital risks, to be familiar and comfortable with them. Some of our programs include Foundations of Digital Transformation, Artificial Intelligence, Auditing Digital Risk, Big Data Analytics, to name a few. If you would like to know more about, leave us a message on the chat and or send us an email. I'm Tony and I'll be your co-host for today. There are few members of our team with us. We'll start with Jessa.
Hello everyone, this is Jessa and I am the producer of the online sessions.
Thank you, Jessa. Metene.
Hi everyone, I'm Medini. I'm going to be working with the polls today.
And Ivan.
Hi guys, it's Ivan. It will be a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you, folks. Okay, on this session, we'll be talking about securing the home network. And our speaker for today is Mario Buzilov. Mario is a certified information systems auditor and fellow of the Financial Services Institute of Australasia. He's been working in data analytics since 1994 and in risk and audit since 1999. In that, he has managed the implementation of a number of continuous monitoring systems and data analytics projects. And now, before to start, I would like to remind you that your videos are on, so keep in mind that we can see you. And Mario, please take it ahead.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Welcome everyone to the session. We live in really interesting times, as we've been talking about recently. COVID pandemic, isolation, many measures around the world, disruption in supply chain, and so on and so on. What is interesting is that actually it's not just about what's happening now during the pandemic, but the profound changes which will be coming to business and the society post the pandemic. And one of those is actually the opportunity for a lot of people to work from home. And this is what this session is all about. So let's have a look at some of the things which are happening around the world right now. What you see here is an article from BBC from yesterday. So very fresh, hot off the press. And Twitter has told employees to work from home to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Now, there is no limit. So basically, Twitter said, you can work from home for as long as you like. Now, whether at some point in time they'll say, we want you back into the office, or whether they'll stay like that, it's anybody's guess. But at the end of the day, we need to assume that probably some of their workforce will remain remote, and this is what will be happening in other places around the world. Now, but it's just Twitter, right? A technology company, very progressive, funky, and so on and so on. But let's have a look at something else. Westpac. This is one of the oldest banks in Australia. One of the so-called Big Four, for those of you who are not familiar. So in Australia, we have 4 banks which are prevented from merging with each other by legislation in order to provide competitiveness in the financial services market. So Westpac is one of the Big Four. Now, what Westpac are looking at the moment is actually sending all of their IT workforce to work remotely. And they're not talking just during the pandemic. They're talking indefinitely. What is really interesting in this situation is also the fact that, excuse me, what is happening is that they will stay like that. They're saying that the IT people actually are more productive if they work from home while they're working from home, as opposed to when they were working from the office. So Westpac is seeing some business benefits. Now, when we look at these 2 companies, we can see that this is just the beginning. Very likely, when the big ones like Twitter and one of the major companies in Australia, I think that on the stock exchange, Westpac is one of the top 20 in the country. When companies like, let's say, were considering very, very seriously making the work from home arrangements permanent for at least some of our stuff, a lot of other companies will be looking at the same thing. And what we need to consider is that when companies start looking at that, there'll be significant benefits from them, from these arrangements. For example, there'll be savings on office space, because if you don't have everybody in the office 5 days a week, you certainly can release some of the office space that is currently being used. Maybe they'll bring people 2 or 3 days a fortnight, just so that they can get some contact with their colleagues and just provide that water cooler moment where people can just gossip a little bit, have a chat with others, and so on and so on. Just that human emotion and human connection. But they can be bringing them in groups, so they won't need all of their office space. Now, if they actually can downsize their office space, that also means that they can reduce not only their rent bill, they are also going to reduce their utilities bill. They'll be paying a lot less for electricity, for water, for building services, for air conditioning, and so on and so on. So I'm pretty sure that some managers are already looking at these things and thinking, well, actually, there are some significant benefits that we can derive. Not to mention the fact that probably governments will be very encouraging about these things, because if we have less people going into the offices in the city center, of course, there will be less pollution, less traffic on the roads, less demands on mass transit. So this is just, personally, I think, a taste of the things to come. But when we send everybody home and actually, in a way, we distribute our corporate network around the world, we need to keep in mind that the people who are working from home, not all of them are actually IT security specialists. So for them, they don't have access to the same support as they would in the office, and we need to help them and actually teach them some good practices in relation to cybersecurity, how to configure their networks at home, and how to protect their devices. And this is what this session is all about. But sending them from home, but let's see what is going on actually when we send them to work from home. This is a survey that was done by the Broadband Genie, a provider in UK. And there are some really interesting insights here, talking about the actions that users performed on their routers. Okay, so update the router firmware. Okay, only 14% actually ever did that. I think that probably with the router firmware, we can live somehow. Okay, it's a problem, but it's not as big problem as the next two, especially the third one. Change the administrator password. So only 18% of the people changed the password on the router, which means that the remaining 82% either have the default password or they relied on the password that somebody else provided. Maybe the technician from the telecommunications company who installed the router, a family member, or somebody like that. But this is really dangerous. Now, having a look at the remaining stats, only 30% ever checked to see what devices are connected to the network, because if somehow you have a foreign device on your home network, you wouldn't know. Change the Wi-Fi password. Okay, this is different from the administrator password. This is how the devices can connect to your network. Only 30%, 31% have changed it, and none of the above. Half of the people haven't done any of these things. So as we can see, users at home are really exposed to a number of potential cybersecurity issues, and they need to be educated about these things. Otherwise, it will be really difficult for them to do it on their own. Now, let's have a look about the rationale behind these things. What is the main reason you have not changed the settings on your router? Okay, 48% said, I don't know why I would need to. I'm pretty sure that a very large percentage of the 48% probably don't even know that there is a router, or they may have heard the word, but that's about it. And then another 34% said, I'm not sure how to do these things. Okay, they are not extremely difficult, and usually each router these days comes with a manual, which is quite consumer friendly. It's not designed for technical people. There are definitely sections there which are targeted technical people, but overall the manuals are relatively easy to understand and follow. Yet 34% are saying don't know how to do it. And then another 6% are saying I could not find clear instructions. Well, that's a little bit of a surprise, but I don't know where they were looking, because usually in the box of the router, there is a manual, or at least there's a quick start menu, and on that quick start menu, there's a link to the site where the full menu is. So looking here, we have 88% of the people who don't know why they need to do it, not sure how to do it, or couldn't find the instructions. Okay, so 88% haven't done much, if anything, with their routers. And this is what we want to actually provide in this session. Easy to follow information that would allow non-technical people to strengthen their security in the home networks. So what we will be talking about is implementing the so-called in-depth protection. We see that at 3 levels. So first, we need to protect the network to a certain extent. Once we've done that, we also want to strengthen the individual devices which are residing on that network. And finally, we'll be talking about protecting specific information on devices. Now, protecting the specific information was a topic of the seminar we did a couple of weeks ago, sorry. But protecting the network, the first 2 levels, protecting the network and protecting the individual devices is what we'll be talking about today. So quick poll.
Hi everyone, you should be seeing a poll pop up on your screen. If you don't see it, let us know in the chat. All right, thank you for participating. Back to you, Mario.
Thanks, Metheny. So we can see the results are fairly evenly spread. Some people know up to a point, they're not sure, and some people don't know. Hopefully, after the session, we'll have a lot better understanding, all of us, what can be done in relation to configuring the routers. Let's have a look what a home network looks like. What you see here is a diagram of a network at home. We can see here that big cloud at the top. This is the internet. The connection from the internet goes into a modem. It can be a cable modem. It can be any other type of modem, depending on what your connection is. And from the modem, it goes into a wireless router. So the wireless router connects to a number of devices, not just computers. As you can see here, we have cameras, we have entertainment systems, we have mobile phones, tablets, and so on. We connect wirelessly. Most of the routers these days also allow you to connect through a cable, a wired connection. So these are much more secure. They're also much faster. And these are much less of a concern, because actually in order to do something, somebody needs to physically get to the cable. Those cables are in the walls of your home, so not a very easy thing to do for a cyber criminal. However, the wireless connectivity is something which is a totally different story, because anybody on the street can try and sniff your traffic. This is how the network works. So what we want to do here, we want to protect the router, which is the heart of the network. Because once a cyber criminal gets access to the router, compromises the router, they can then compromise any single device on the network. And then we'll look at individual devices, what can be done. Okay, some of the more popular routers, router manufacturers, are Netgear, D-Link, Linksys, and Asus. There's a number of others. These are the big names. If you do a search on the internet, top 20 routers, you are gonna get a lot of hits. I just did this morning. I came across 5 sites straight away, different recommendations, overlapping to some extent. To some extent, they were different. So there's a lot of information there. But let's assume that you already have a router. So what do we do with the router that already exists? Number one thing to do in a router is to change the administrator's password. Administrator is a user who can log into a router. Just think of the router as a type of computer. And they can do pretty much anything they want. They can change wireless passwords. They can connect new devices to the network. They can do a number of things. How do we connect to a router? What you see here is a number of addresses. So you just open an empty page in your browser, and in the address bar, depending on the manufacturer of your router, you just type one of the addresses which are shown here. As you can see, 192.161.1.1 and 192.161.0.1 are very popular, so it's a good idea to start with these two. Linksys, D-Link, and Netgear all support the 192.168.0.1. So try this one. Check with your router manufacturer. Check with the manual. Depending on your router, if it comes from a different router, it can be something else. Once you go into the browser and once you type that address in the address bar, you're going to get to the login prompt. Now, what you see here is an excerpt from one of the router manuals. I used a Netgear router for this one. And it shows here that in the menu itself, the manufacturer says the password for admin is the default password, is the same as your password for WebGUI login, and it is password. So basically, everybody who knows what the administrative password for Netgear routers is, and it's available online, can log into your router if you haven't changed the password. That's why I think this is the number one thing. The default passwords are available for every router. Every manufacturer publishes their default passwords because that's the way to set up the router initially, and it is a strong recommendation by everyone to change the password straight after that. So we now know what the default password is, and we can come to the actual prompt where we enter the password. So here we are sitting at address 192.168.0.1. This is the one that we typed in the address bar, and this is what came up on the screen. So when we type in the username of admin and the password of password and click login, if the password hasn't been changed, we are in the router. Now, we definitely don't want that. Once we're in the router, it depends, different routers are using different menu system and different screens. This is again for a Netgear router. There is a place in the router somewhere, in the router interface, security sometimes, or router administration, where you have a change password menu. You type in the old password, the new password, repeat the new password, and some of them allow you to time out after nothing has been going on for 5 minutes. That's a great idea. 5 minutes is okay. If it's more than 5 minutes, just reduce it to 5 minutes, because if you went to have a cup of coffee or whatever, your router will time out and nobody else will be able to log in. Now, very unlikely that, to some extent, it's unlikely that you're going to have the default password on your router if your router has been provided to you by the telecommunications company. If you bought the router yourself and are connecting it on your own, definitely go and change the password. You have the default password. If the router is provided by the telecommunications company, they might have changed the password. When the technician comes to install the router, or if you just receive the router by mail, ring them and ask what is the password for the router. They may say it's the default one, now you know what to do. Or if they have changed, the technician can tell you what the password is. If they don't, my strong suggestion would be find in the manual how to reset the router. Go and reset it, because that would reset all of the settings. Most importantly, to reset the password to the default password. You may lose some of the telecommunications provider settings, but you can actually ring them and get them. The important thing is to change the password. Now, I'm definitely not saying that every technician working for a telco is a potential cyber criminal. But I'll give you an analogy. I don't really want to have the keys to my house given around to people that I know very little about. They may be okay, but I haven't given the keys to the house to a complete stranger. And essentially, if we don't change the password, that's what we are doing. We're giving the keys to our network to a complete stranger. Definitely don't want this to happen. So change it, and then things are much safer. Not everybody does it though. As you can see here, I took this screenshot yesterday. Right now, there is a search engine for IoT devices, Internet of Things devices, called Shodan, and it provides a mechanism to identify which routers are using the default passwords. These are probably not all of the routers in the world. However, as of yesterday, there are close to 53,000 routers with the default passwords. So cyber criminals know very well how to access this information on Shodan. It's a publicly available information. There's nothing secret or sinister about using it. There are very legitimate purposes for using Shodan. The thing is that cyber criminals are using it as well. They will be able to actually access that router. So if you have the default password, potentially your router may end up on this list here, because Shodan, like Google, is indexing the internet all the time. Second thing to do, SSID. SSID is the name of your network. Change it and hide it. There's some sort of a default SSID. Change it depending what it is. Here it says that the SSID is Netgear. I'll change it to something totally irrelevant, because I don't really want to give a potential cyber criminal a little bit additional information what my router is. If they can work out what the router is, they may start actually a couple of steps ahead if they try to break into it. Also hide it. It's not exactly 100% proof, and it is a little bit inconvenient, because when you try to connect a new device to your network, it won't show on the list of available devices, and you need to key in the name manually, but you have to write some of these things down. It's actually a very good idea to document the settings of your networks, your home network, in a file somewhere. It's probably half a page, but write it down and store that information securely on a drive, on Dropbox or somewhere. Change the name of the network and hide it. Don't put your family name. I see a lot of networks, actually there are some even around where I live, where people put their family names. Why do you want to actually give a potential cyber criminal one additional piece of information about yourselves? If your surname is Smith, don't put it there. Just call the network anything. Call it Frank Flintstone or whatever. don't provide information that is actually relevant to you, personal to you, or to your family. The other thing is people tend to code just for convenience, Netgear 2 and Netgear 5, which shows what are the bands that each network operates. Remove it from there. Call it 1 and 2 or something like that. Again, provide as little information as possible to potential cyber criminals. The name, enable SSID broadcast, disable the SSID broadcast. The next thing to do is to upgrade the firmware on the router. The router, as I said, is like a computer. The more advanced of them actually are running an operating system inside, like Linux. And they need updates. Vulnerabilities are being discovered constantly, and those need to be fixed. Firmware updates take care of that. So occasionally, every 3 or 4 weeks, log into the router. If it can be set on automatic, great. Log into the router, update the firmware. Because this way, you always will have the latest version of the firmware, which takes care of all of the known vulnerabilities. Of course, vulnerabilities are coming out all the time, but at least the ones that are known, we can take care of. Now, if your router supports dual band networks, configure those. In this case here, we can see there is one wireless network, 2.4 gigahertz, and then there's another one, which is 5 gigahertz. And as you can see, as I mentioned before, the first one is called Netgear, the next one is called Netgear-5G, just to make it a little bit easier for cyber criminal. Yes, I know it's convenient for us, but as I said, if you document the names of the networks, you would know that your 5 gigahertz network is called, I don't know, Fred Flintstone 3, and your 2 gigahertz network is called Wilma Flintstone 1 or something like that. Don't provide unnecessary information to the cyber criminals. Sacrifice convenience for security. My strong suggestion. Configure both. If you support dual band networks, configure both. The one to use primarily is the 5 gigahertz one because it's faster. It's a newer standard, and actually the speeds on that network are faster in your network at home. But the 2.4 gigahertz also has got its own place. So configure both. And very importantly, encrypt the Wi-Fi connections. These are the connections between the router and all of the devices in your home. Now, most people would not leave it at none. The problem is that a lot of people don't realize that the second option here, WEP, is not very secure. Actually, it has been proven, and it can be broken very easily. The ones to go is the second last one, WPA, PSK. So just look at WPA2. WPA2 is the one that we want. WPA on its own is not as secure as well. Most routers that were bought in the last 3 to 5 years will have WPA2. Use WPA2. Configure it for each one of the networks that you have. Configure it for the 2.4 gigahertz. Configure it for the 5 gigahertz, for both of them. Very important, because this way nobody actually can sniff your traffic, nobody can see what's going, and nobody can connect to your network. So WPA2-PSK is the way to go. Most routers support something which is called universal plug and play, UPnP. Unless you really need UPnP, and if you do, you will know why, and probably know about a lot of other settings on your router. Unless you really need it, disable this one. It has been shown by security researchers that there are some vulnerabilities associated with it, and it is better not to have it on. So find it where it is in the router and just untick that box. We don't want UPnP. Unless you're doing some heavy gaming, and a couple of other more specific activities, you don't need UPnP. Most of us don't. I've never used it in my network. So I think that over 80% of the people don't need it. Unless you're doing some really technical work or, as I said, gaming or something like that, you may. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Find it where it is, get rid of it. Remote management is off. A lot of routers allow you to actually log into the router from somewhere else. For example, you can try to administer your router from your office if you're at work, or you can administer it from your holiday destination if you're on holiday somewhere. Make sure that this capability is turned off as well. There is no need to have, for most of the people, and I would say here that that's the vast majority, well beyond 80%, most of the people do not need remote management capabilities. Can you wait until you get back home to administer your router? Can you wait until you get back from the holidays? I think that it creates more problems than it solves. So it's better not to have it. If somebody hacked into your router and you want actually to prevent that, remote management is not going to help you, because probably they have already ticked that one off. If it was a cyber criminal who's got access to your router. So disable it unless you're a highly technical person who knows the specific reason why they need it. My strong recommendation is disable. You may enable it temporarily to give somebody access, like let's say a telecommunications support person from the telecommunications company, to do something. Once it's over, disable it again. You don't want people to have access to your router. And by the way, if you give them access, also change the password after that. Now, guest networks, a really important topic. It's best if we don't have them. However, in the world that we live in, we have people coming to our houses. Well, not at the moment, but soon we will again. And sometimes they want to connect to our networks. I get that request all the time. So when we get friends with kids, we are sitting around the table having dinner. The kids don't want to stay with us. That's the normal situation these days. They want to be on the internet. So they keep asking me about the password for the network. Now, guest networks allow you to fix that problem. You can have your main network in one place, and you can create a separate guest network. Most contemporary routers, again, allow that. And you can allow everybody to connect to that guest network. So your main network with your work devices and your private devices will be protected. The guests can be on the guest network. And you can actually put a little bit simpler password on the guest network. Because on the other one, we talked about strong passwords 2 weeks ago. My suggestion would be put as strong password as possible. On the guest network, you can relax that a little bit. If there is nothing connected to the guest network, that's okay. Another consideration is if you have a dual band router, like 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, connect the guest network, set up the guest network over the 2.4 gigahertz, because that's the one with the slower performance. And I don't think that it matters that much if somebody's going to be using it for 2 or 3 hours. And set the 5 gigahertz with the higher speed for your private network. So this way, you're going to isolate the guests, you're going to have the bandwidth that you need, and they can still do all of the browsing, because 2.4 gigahertz is a good speed for most tasks. So guest networks, if your router allows it, enable them. Guest networks are also good for kids and parents. If they live with you, you can connect the kids and the parents to the guest network. This way, they won't be able to do too much damage, because it's difficult to run a cybersecurity crash course to somebody who is 8 years old or somebody who is 80 years old. So instead of actually trying to teach them these things, just connect them to the guest networks. There's no need to tell them, don't click here, don't click there, there's potential malware, all of these things are happening online. If you connect them to the gas network, the damage can be actually minimized significantly. So a quick activity for 5 minutes. Now, check on your system if your firewall is on. Use the search function in the firewall settings, and also navigate to your router login page. You can use one of the addresses below. See whether you're going to get the login screen for the router. Just please enable the breakout rooms. Okay, well, welcome back to the session. Let's continue. Just one final comment to finish the conversation with Alan. Routers are one thing, but I can tell you that it's part of the audit technique to check for the default passwords on various databases there. I have done that before, because the databases have the same issue with the default passwords, and when you don't change it, you bypass every single thing and just go straight into the database. You don't care about application controls and so on and so on.
Correct, yeah.
So let's keep going. I hope you got some insights about these things and how to handle them. One really important thing that I wanted to mention is the IoT, the so-called Internet of Things, where you have a lot of things connected to your network. That can be, as you can see here, there is a temperature sensor in the top right corner. There is also a camera in the garage. There is the heating. There is the washing machine in the bottom left corner. So it's not smart lighting. So it's not just about computers. It's about a lot of other. These things provide quite a bit of a problem depending on the situation. Now, when you have devices which are not computers, connect them to a separate network. It's best if you just connect them to a guest network, or you can just actually say, no guest network, my guest network will be dedicated to IoT devices. Change the passwords. These devices come with passwords of some kind because they actually need to connect to your network. You're connecting a device. How that's done, that depends on the manufacturer. The ones that I'm really very hesitant are the ones that have a hardwired password, because you actually are giving someone access to your network from a device that you've got no idea who controls it. And you cannot actually stop that control, because like a little media server is like a mini computer. It's got its own password. And if you don't change it and give it access to your Wi-Fi network, you're essentially giving access to your Wi-Fi network to the manufacturer. Which brings us to the last point. Buy reputable brands. Because when you buy a temperature sensor or a camera, a smart camera for $20 or $30 or 100 ringgit, there's simply not enough money in that price to feed the retailer, to feed the manufacturer, and to spend enough on research and development. So security becomes an afterthought. So cheap devices come with a much higher security problem than the rest of them. So if you're linking IoT devices, smart home and whatever, to your network, just be mindful of that. Buy reputable brands. There's too many of them to provide specific recommendations, but just have around. Price is usually a good indicator, and you can do some research online. Just don't buy a no-name brand because you don't know what you are connecting to your network and giving it full access. We're talking about protecting the router, and then we connect an IoT device that can listen to everything, and you don't know what it's doing. So potential issue. How big is it of an issue? What you see here is a classroom in China that had with Wi-Fi camera, and that has been hacked by somebody. What you see here is a baby in Canada that has got a camera in its bedroom in order for the parents to monitor what's going on. Again, the camera was hacked. We might think, well, but it's only online, right? We never know, because just as an example, if we have an air conditioner, a smart air conditioner, and somebody managed to hack into the camera, they'll probably will be able to hack into any other device on the network. And that baby can be made to feel really uncomfortable. Either put the air conditioner on max or put it on minimum, the baby definitely won't be happy. So it's relatively easy to move from the online into the real world. And here's another one, baby monitor hacked and spies on Texas child. There was a baby monitor, somebody hacked the baby monitor. It actually was the child, fortunately, it was a two-year-old girl that was asleep, that was still sleeping. She didn't wake up, but they were just talking some sexually explicit content through the camera. The parents just were horrified when they discovered it. So IoT can be quite a significant issue. Firewalls. So a quick poll.
Either you should be able to see a poll pop up on your screen. If you don't, please let us know in the chat. All right, thank you for participating. You will see the results on your screen now. Back to you, Mario.
Yeah, thanks, Methany. Yep, I guess that's understandable. Most of us don't check the results very often, but it's a good idea to have a look every now and then and to see what's going on there. So the reason for that is that the second part of securing the network is the firewalls. So there are two firewalls. There is one in your router. Just make sure that it is enabled. When you log in as admin, you can see where it is. There are also firewalls in your systems connected to the network, in some of them. In the router, there is the firewall that separates your local area network on the left LAN from the wide area network, which is the internet. So this is the first part of the defense. In your systems, you have firewalls that protect each individual system. It is good to have both of them enabled at home. There can be security issues with the router and vulnerabilities. So if one firewall does not provide full protection for a period of time until that vulnerability is patched and you download the latest version of the firmware, another one will, which is in the system. Just quickly, here's a screenshot, sorry, from the firewall settings on a Mac. You come here, make sure that the firewall is on. Most of them come with on by default, but it's good to have a look and make sure that everything's sweet. On Windows, here's the screen for Windows. It's got two firewalls, one for private networks, one for guest or public networks. Enable it for both. Doesn't matter that on your home network, it's a private network. Personally, I treat all of the devices on the network as being on a public network, sorry. I just don't trust any device on the network. I can figure them myself, but the thing is that I don't know if somebody will try at some point in time to connect to the network. So it's better actually to bump everything to the highest possible level of security. But in case you have both, make sure that the firewalls are enabled on both private and public networks. Windows gives you two different settings, just check them. Do a search in the search box on the Windows screen, do a search for firewall or Windows Defender, it will take you there. VPN. Now VPN is another way to protect the traffic. It allows whatever comes out of your system onto the internet to go into a secure channel that only you can see. So when you have a VPN coming out of your router onto the internet, nobody can see where you are going. VPNs allow you to hide your physical location, so you can actually bypass some geolocation restrictions from various companies. But more importantly, VPNs hide the traffic that goes out of your system onto the internet from everybody. They hide it from marketers, from search engines, from ISP, or whoever. The only entity that knows anything about your traffic is the VPN provider. VPNs come paid and free. The paid ones are not that expensive, $30, $40 for, or 100 ringgit for 3 years. To give you a peace of mind, strongly recommend it. Have a VPN coming out of your router onto the internet. Nobody can see what you are doing, and they cannot look at your browsing habits or anything like that. And we'll talk about the VPN in a second. So find the paid one. As I said, don't look for the freebies because the VPN provider keeps a log of all of your internet activity. Find a reputable one. If you do a search, there will be 2 or 3 that would pop up all the time. The last bit is securing the personal devices. Now, here, some important considerations which are very easy to implement. Just the question is whether they have been done. Enable automatic software updates and operating system updates. Windows and Mac periodically provide you with notifications that there is a new patch coming because something has been discovered and has been fixed. It can be a security issue, it can be a bug, it can be something else. Enable the automatic updates. At the very least, enable the updates to be downloaded, review them, and then install them yourself, because sometimes you don't really want to be in the middle of doing something when the system decides to install the updates. This is what I do on my systems. Download the updates, and the system will tell me there's a new update. In the evening, I'll just kick off the update. Everything will be fine. How important is it? There's a site called NVD, National Vulnerability Database, which tracks what are the vulnerabilities across various devices. Here's a snapshot from 2 hours ago. CVE stands for Common Vulnerability Exposure. That's how many potential security issues have been discovered. Nothing yet today. And the reason nothing yet today, because 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Malaysia is probably still around 11 p.m. in the States. This goes on States time zone. So they haven't moved on to Thursday yet, or maybe shortly after midnight. But see, this week there are 172 that have been received. This month, close to 500. This year, there is 7,500 potential issues. This include things like Mac systems, Windows systems, mobile phones, iPhones, Android phones, Windows 7, Windows 10, whatever. And on the right-hand side, you can see the number of vulnerabilities since inception of the database, close to 10,000 critical, 27,000 high severity. Things are bad. Bugs do happen. People are trying all the time to penetrate and break the security of operating systems and software, like Microsoft Office and others. Patch your system. Doesn't cost anything. Patching is provided for free by the manufacturer. Install an antivirus if you don't have one. Don't just rely on the built in from Windows. There's a number of them, paid and free. My personal favorite is Sophos. It's free for up to 5 systems. Sophos is an enterprise security vendor with very high reputation, and they just made some of that expertise available to home users for free. Install it. Let it update automatically if possible, or at least do it regularly. It will fix another set of potential problems. Manage the users. In your Windows and Mac systems, you have users that are administrators and you have users that are just standard users. You don't need more than one administrator. There is no point having more than one. Just make sure that there is one. And if you share the system with 3 or 4 people in your family, well, just assume the responsibilities or assign the responsibility for the administrative functions to one person who can create new users, can remove users, and so on and so on. You don't want many people being able to touch the critical settings in an operating system. It's not just about security, it's also about the operation of the system. So make sure that you don't have too many users with very high privileges. This is something that as IS auditors, and I work as one, or used to work as one up until recently, we check all the time. We don't want to see users who can do a lot of stuff. There is usually 1 or 2 people on a corporate network or on a corporate database. Low tech is not so bad. Cover your webcam. Cover it with a piece of sticky tape. Cover or buy a device. They cost about 3 ringgit. You can buy them in a number of places. You can put the device, it is like a little door that goes over your camera. You can close it and you can open it. The sticky tape is a little bit messy when you do it too often. Cover your webcam. This is the recommendation that was provided by the director of FBI 3 or 4 years ago, and even Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook said that he covers his webcam. Doesn't cost anything, it's just a very safe practice. Use an old mic or headphone plug. Put something in your microphone input or your headphones input to disable the microphone. Like right now, I have an external mic here, which is plugged in, and this is the one that I use for talking, but that mic actually has got its own on and off button. So when I turn it off, the system sees a mic, so it disables the internal mic, but at the same time, you cannot hear what I'm saying. There have been vulnerability cases where people could get control of mics and they could listen to the conversations in a room and so on and so on. It's better to prevent that. Use an old plug, cut the cable, just plug it into the connector for the mic, leave it there until you need it, and that's very easy. Unneeded connectivity. If you don't need Bluetooth on your systems, well, maybe it's not a bad idea to disable it. I know that most systems do. If you don't, on some systems you do, on some systems you don't. You don't connect Bluetooth to all of your systems. The ones that don't need it, if you have a set of Bluetooth headphones, you probably use it on one system, disable Bluetooth on the others. Things like that. Think of each one of these as a window into your house. The more windows are closed, the more difficult it is for a criminal to get into the house. Connectivity is one of those windows. Encrypt your hard drives. The encryption is built into the Mac and Windows systems. If somebody actually steals your system, they wouldn't be able to, and takes the hard drive out, they wouldn't be able to get access to it if it's encrypted, access to the information. If it's not encrypted, it is relatively easy to do that. Auto lock, set it to something small. Okay. If it's a desktop laptop, 10 to 15 minutes. If it's a mobile phone, 1 to 3 minutes. iPhone allows you to set it to a minimum of 30 seconds, which may be a little bit excessive. My personal one is set to 1 minute. I don't know, maybe I may forget my phone. I usually guard it very strongly, but things can happen. At least nobody would be able to get into the phone. It is a minor inconvenience because in most cases, while you are browsing or something, you don't really have it inactive for more than a minute. So 1 minute or more than 3 minutes. If it's more than 3 minutes, you definitely already forgot what you were doing on that specific instance. Make the auto lock, set it to something small, just to avoid potential disasters here. Connecting to public Wi-Fi. Now, this is a really interesting one. Wi-Fi is all around us and it's very convenient to use. And sometimes it's the only option. If you're roaming, I was roaming a lot up until 6 months ago. I've been to Malaysia about 19 times in the last 3 years and a number of other countries. Sometimes public Wi-Fi is the only option before I actually get into the country and manage to buy a SIM. So we all connect to Wi-Fi. If you do that, be careful. Always use a VPN. As I said, the VPN that you can use on your router, most providers actually give you 6 devices or a number of devices to connect to it. So you can actually connect your VPN. Nobody can snoop on your traffic. Really, really important, because personally, if I don't have, before I got the VPN a few years ago, I would never connect to a Wi-Fi network. Simply because the danger is too big. There are too many people around me in an airport or in a large building or in a coffee shop. I don't know who is who. It's better just to stay away. What I used to do, at least in Australia, or if I'm in one of the countries that my provider supports the roaming from, I'll just go using the GSM network, much safer than connected to public Wi-Fi. Now I do connect to public Wi-Fi, but I have a VPN. You go into a hotel, great, they give you the free Wi-Fi connectivity, but you don't know who else is connected. And actually some of these networks are not protected at all. And some of these networks have the same password for everyone. High-end hotels at least give you a unique password for your room, for your reservation, but hotels which are a little bit cheaper don't do that. They just either keep the network totally open, which means that everybody can see what you're doing, or they have one password which is pretty much the same thing because everybody knows what the password is. And when connecting, even if you have the VPN, pick the correct password because there's something called phishing, where people install access points which resemble legitimate access points. When you connect to them, they actually snoop on your traffic and then send it to the correct one. But they can see everything that goes between your device and the internet. An example, Hilton Guest. This is what the Hilton networks are called around the world. Very, very similar. Hilton Guests. If you don't pay attention, you can't connect to either of those. And you might be wondering, okay, back. This is looks the same. Okay, I'll connect to this one. Be careful. Whatever is the name that has been provided to you by staff at reception, or if you're at the airport by the information desk or whatever, just connect to that one. Because there can be another hotspot which introduces the so-called man-in-the-middle attack, where they intercept your traffic, then send it onwards, as I said, but they know everything that you're sending. Passwords, sensitive information, you name it. So again, these are just some common sense precautions. They don't cost any money, but just something to keep in mind when we're connected. So this is the end of our session. Just quickly, we need to pay more and more attention. Now, it's not just about us. It's also keep in mind that, as I said, my personal feeling is that a large percentage of the workforce will stay at home forever. 20 or 30%, all of the, not all, but a large percentage of the people will be working from home 20 or 30% of the time. Makes more sense for them, makes more sense for the employers. Not all of them are security professionals. So if you have them on your team, you just need to tell them what to do. This is the sessions we do. If you want to talk to us, we can actually run one of those for your team in-house. Well, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining us. Please let us know what you thought about our session by doing the poll.
Excellent as usual.
Thank you. It's great to hear some kind words.
Yeah, totally refreshing and brand new. I haven't come across personal needs before. Now I realize.
We have some time for Q&A. You can use the chat, yes, or you can use your mics.
Is there a standard that actually we can apply internationally? Since I mean, what you mentioned here are best practices, all right? So yep. Can you recommend anything like that?
You mean in terms of configuring the networks?
Yes, correct. For personal networks, the routers, right? Is there something that we can download off the net, all right?
To be honest, I haven't come across anything. I've run this session a few times already. Every time I research new stuff, each manufacturer provides some recommendations. I don't know. I haven't come across a standard. That's for sure.
Right.
But
so
yep.
So I do hear that the VPN would be the one, the best one, a paid VPN, right? So that will help actually.
A paid VPN.
Yes.
Personally, I use NordVPN. it's one of the top 3. There was another one which I forgot, but the NordVPN looks a little bit better. Paid VPN is the way to go here, especially if you're connecting to public hotspots.
Yeah.
Every time when I come to Malaysia, I always run any connections in the hotel through the NordVPN.
All right, all right. So would your slides be made available to us? Maybe I can send it out to my team.
We'll make the slides available, and the whole session will be recorded and also will be made available on YouTube. So the full recording and the slides.
All right, well, thank you. Well, listen to Mario and save yourself.
But as I said, we're happy to run it for your team.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, now everything with Zoom makes it so easy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yep, yeah. This is another change that we all need to get used to, I guess. Yeah, things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams will rule the world. We'll see. Well, that's life. But I'll give you a buzz maybe tomorrow or Monday to have a quick chat.
Okay, then. Thank you, Mario.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Alan.
everyone.
Okay.
All right, bye.
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 Okay, over to you, Tony.
Okay, thank you for making time to join us today. Hope you enjoyed. See you next week, same day, same time, when we'll be talking about data analytics in fraud detection. In this session, we will consider the potential fraud indicators that can be discovered using data analytics. We will also look at case studies in government and private sectors where data analytics has been successfully used for fraud detection. And finally, we will examine how data analytics can help with fraud prevention. Don't forget to share with your colleagues and friends. Thank you. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Sure.